I've been here once before. It was in a different place. It was a very low roof. It was quite low. I did two characters, and they were gifts from God to me. All of my life, I wanted to be an actor. All of my life. I wore a spot out in front of a television, waiting for Red Ryder to appear. And there were two Red Riders. There was Wild Bill Elliott, that's Red Ryder, and then there was Rocky Lane. And when the way Red Ryder opened up, there was like a book. The book opened up, and Red Ryder and his horse would step out. And if I saw Rocky Lane, I apparently threw things at the television, screamed, rolled around. My parents had to drag me away, crying in tears, because Rocky Lane was not Red Ryder. Red Ryder, Wild Bill Elliott, was a peaceful man who wore a black hat that never fell off, his guns were backwards, wore chaps, and had Little Beaver as his sidekick. And Little Beaver later killed somebody, but I won't talk about that. But I was quite aware of the differences that were coming across that flat screen I guess I was 5 years old, 6 years old. And my parents cut out the spot in the carpet that I wore away. So I can see where my little backside was. And today it would be a big spot. But there it was. And I can think back to all the things in my life that, other people had other desires to do things, but I just wanted to be an actor. Never wanted to do anything else. Never. And when in that I became invested in late night talk television programs. My grandmother would let me stay up when my parents were away on vacation. I would watch Jack Parr and his guests. Yes, that's right. I used to watch Jack Parr, Steve Allen, and he had all of these fabulous characters who came on and spoke with these phenomenal voices. There was one guy named Alexander King, and I used his voice in a scene in the 18th. And Alexander King talked like this, and he wrote a book called May Your House Be Safe from Tigers. And Oscar Levant, a pianist and a neurotic, and Charlie Weaver and Jonathan Winters, who was a million voices. And I saw Jonathan Winters and I said, oh my God, that's it, that's what I want to be able to do those voices. And my parents, my mother was a telephone operator, my father a letter carrier. We did not have a lot of money, but my parents bought me at about the age of 9 a little Webcore tape recorder. And I started to record my voice, and then of course you could play it back. And when I first heard my voice back, I came from Baltimore, and I was horrified because I don't know if you don't know anybody from Baltimore, hon. I got to tell you, this is what we sound like. And I said, I'm sitting there, I'm listening. I said, oh my God, that's not me. That's not me. And I spent, and I'm serious, I was so horrified that I didn't sound the way I thought I sounded. I then spent the next 3 years listening to British actors, which I was an Anglophile. I mean, the first time I heard Richard Burton on television, and then I immediately I begged my mother to please buy me the musical Camelot so that I could listen to it all of the time. And I did, and I ended up doing a great Richard Burton impression. This is how I started it, and I talked into the tape recorder, listened to British actors, listened to Laurence Olivier, listened to Peter O'Toole, went to see the British movies, listened to people, talked into a tape recorder, studied my own voice, and eventually I got rid of the Baltimore accent, although I could still do it when it pins. And there's another actor from Baltimore named John Glover, and when the two of us get together, hon, I'm telling you, it's crazy. But anyway, that's the way. And then I went. I started doing musicals. I was into rock and roll just up until the Brits came in, and then I got into musical theater. And then I decided that I wanted to be a professional actor, and went to Towson State University, which had a professional theater program. Started working studying to be an actor to get my theater degree, and then went to Baltimore Center Stage. Thank you very much. And I went to Center Stage in Baltimore, and then I worked for 13 years in regional theater. I was just telling this story actually. I was at the Williamstown Theater Festival in Williamstown, Massachusetts, in 1978. And I had some wonderful roles there, and a casting director named Lois Quanco saw me on stage, and then she saw me afterwards in the cabaret doing voices and skits and funny. I'm doing a Chekhov or a Gorky play and then shtick. And so she asked me to do a comedy tape for NBC. I did a scene from Beyond Therapy by Christopher Lang. And I did Richard Burton reading Dorothy Parker poems. And this comedy tape was circulating in Los Angeles for about 3 or 4 years. And I was playing Lord Byron at the Philadelphia Theater Guild when I got this call on a Monday to fly out to audition for this new TV series called The A-Team. So I said, it's my day off. I had only one day off in the theater. You have one day off, Monday. I said, it's Monday, and I'm terrible at audition. I've only gotten 7 jobs in my life for the audition process, just 7. But they said, oh, this is really an important thing, you got to do it. So I flew out on my day off, and I got the job. Although I bombed in the first audition. I was in a room. I was in a room about 1/8 or 1/10 the size of this room, but just this many people. And I got up and I read this scene where I'm in the where I've shaved my head with the pilot. I've shaved my head and I'm there auditioning, and all of these people are looking at me the way you're looking at me now. And the audition is over. And nobody does anything. And Rod Holcomb, the director, stood up and put his arm around me, and we walked outside. And he worked with me. And we sat down and we talked, and I said, we're going to do it again. I then walked in, and so help me God, this is the truth. I do not understand the audition process. I don't. I went back in, and I did exactly the same thing. And they were going, ah! It's wonderful. And I got the part. Then I went to Mexico, and midway through shooting the pilot, Rod Holcomb said, you're fired. They fired. They don't like you. Grant Tinker, Brandon Tartikoff, they just don't think that America's going to accept you in night after night, week after week. It's just not going to happen. So get your clothes. We're moving you down with the stuntmen. So this is what they did. And well, life goes on. You just do it. You just do it. So then we got back to Los Angeles, and when we got back to Los Angeles, they were cutting the show as we were filming it. My agent called me and said, your dials were great. Your dials were unbelievable. I mean, you had the best dials of anybody in the show. And I said, does this mean I'm not fired? Yes. I didn't know what the hell dials were, but I wasn't fired. And it wasn't because the producers didn't. I mean, the producers actually, I haven't say, I was told, it wasn't Stephen Cannell, and it was Brandon Tartikoff and Grant Tinker wanted me fired. So I was back in, and my dials were good. And when I had gotten this news that I was going to be fired, obviously you realize I was very depressed. And Melinda Pillea and Tim Dunnigan, who was the original face man, took me out to dinner one night, and they put their arms around me, and I was receiving all this consolation from them. Well, after the pilot's finished, we're getting ready to do the first episode. It's the only time we've been called in to read the script. We didn't even read the pilot. But we're going to read the first script. We get to Stephen Cannell's office, and Tim Dunnigan was not there. The guy who put his arm around me and took me out to dinner because I had been fired, And he was replaced by Dirk Benedict. They didn't tell us Dirk Benedict was going to be. You can imagine how difficult it was for him. And this first episode was everybody asked this question, and so it was the trash bags episode. And so we read it, and it went very well. And they had written me out of the first 6 episodes. So now they had to write me back in. So I didn't have a lot to do in the first 6 episodes because they were reintegrating me. And I would take off. This was my chance. So I took every script that they wrote, and I said, well, I can do Peter O'Toole here. I can do Burton here. I can do Sean Connery here. And you would get these phone calls. Don't do that. What do you think this is, a kid's show? And I said, yes. Am I wrong? Was I making a mistake? But then those shows dialed very well. So they would then write that stuff. Or they would say, now, this is it. I gave them a list of all the impressions that I do. Never once did they ever indicate that I was to do an impression that I did. Next week you're going to sing like Frank Sinatra. How about that? No, I don't sing like Frank Sinatra. I sing like Anthony Newley. What kind of fool am I? I do that, I can do that, but I can't do Frank Sinatra. But you're going to do Frank Sinatra. But that's the way that show was. If I did a chicken, a mime of a chicken one week, the next week they would write me urinating on a fire plug as a dog. And that was the A-Team. And it was the #1 show in the country, and we loved it, but Tartikoff wrote this article in the New York Times, and gave an interview in the New York Times, where he said, we're not proud of this show. This is not quality entertainment. Hill Street Blues, St. Elsewhere, this is what we want to do. So I sent him a telegram calling him a third-rate executive. George Papard said, oh, pal, that was a mistake. That was a big mistake. So you don't want to do that. I did it, George. Oh, pal. Pal, no, you don't want to go down that road. I said, I already did it, George. Oh, it's a mistake. I got a letter, telegram, because this is how we communicated back then in the old days. I got a telegram back, which I kept. How dare you hurt me this way? You have hurt me. Do you think that you didn't check to see if I really said those things? I have chased this reporter down. I didn't say those things. I said, no, I did call the reporter, and she said she has you on tape. Oh, so we sent telegrams back and forth, and I said, you said I hurt you. You were the one who said that I'm one of the people you're not proud of. I didn't go to the New York Times and say, I want you to print that we're not proud of Brandon Tartikoff. I did that personally. You gave us a mission, as if we were in the military. You said you wanted us to become the #1 show in the country. We did. And what did we get for it? We're not proud. Well, that was the way the show started, and they never changed. Although we loved it, and so we were #1, no one at NBC had ever seen it. So they said, I'm sorry, I understand you're a good actor. I don't watch that show. Okay? I don't watch it. It pays my salary, because we make a lot of money off of it. There's 30 million people watching it every week. There's a 20 or 30 share. I said, it pays my salary, but I don't watch that show. And that was the way. And towards, I guess, it only went 4 seasons. And, of course, actors have to go 5. to renegotiate their contracts before they make any money. And I started off at the, I was way down here in the prices, or price range. I was way down, way down. And they wanted us, this is so embarrassing. Grant Tinker called us and said they wanted the A-Team to introduce the new season. Now you can imagine, T. T did not like any of this stuff either. I mean, it was just, I'm not going to do that, brother. I'm not going to do anything for you. I'm a piece of meat. You're going to put me in the frying pan and then throw me away. That was T. And so they called us up and said, okay, look, we want you to introduce the next season. We will send the longest limousine in the world to pick you up. Now you can just think about that for a second. He said to, I mean, it was probably the worst thing they could ever say. And we ended up not doing anything for NBC again. And the show went 4 years, and it died. I, however, was a very lucky man. I made a movie with Whoopi Goldberg called The Long Walk Home about the Montgomery bus boycott. And Whoopi was in Star Trek, Next Generation. She was Guyan. And I knew Brent Spiner from New York. I did my first off-Broadway play with Brent. And I knew Jonathan Frakes. And I said to Whoopi, I said, oh, Whoopi, you know, I love Star Trek. I'm so happy for you. And please say hello to Brent. And I love Patrick Stewart. You know, he was a great choice. Totally different than Shatner, but you'd still go over the hill for him. And she said, well, you ought to be on that show. I said, oh, come on, that. And so we had a very good experience, very good working relationship. She and I are both pretty raunchy. I got to tell you, she was a lot of fun. She was a lot of fun. And I guess about three or 4 months after I was finished shooting, my manager, who has now since passed away, said, Dwight? And I said, yes, Lynn, you have a script spoken for you. And I said, what is it? What is it? It's for Star Trek. And I said, when do I audition? You don't have to audition. It's your role. The script is on the way. And I thought to myself, oh my God, a Michael Westmore, vein pulsing part. I saw myself in the makeup, you know, in the chair, 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 hours later, looking like you could never believe. The script arrived. I opened it up, and there it was, a nerd. A nerd. And my manager said, yes, it's written just for you. It's you. And well, of course, as I got to the end of the script, it was a brilliant stroke, because they were taking, what is Star Trek about? It's about fans. You said this in episode 4. You said this in episode 5, and it doesn't work. You know, and the multiplying lithium crystals don't work here. You know, they are so upset. They put a fan on the deck of the Enterprise. Somebody who represented everybody who ever spent any time chasing down William Shatner wanting a piece of his fat. Please, just one little piece, you won't feel it. I have a needle, I'll inject it first, and then I'll just cut this little piece off here. You don't need it, I promise, you'll look better. And, well, this is true. Actually, it's not a bad idea. Liposuction for the stars, you know? William Shatner's dripping, you know, but anyway, so I go in and of course there's everything, and this is my habit, everything is asked backwards in show business, always. So I go onto the set to do Barclay, this great role, and they shoot the tag at the end first. So you've seen nothing so this is your first day of shooting, and you're shooting the last scene. And so I shoot the last scene, and everybody's quite wonderful to me. I knew Jonathan, I knew Brand, as I said, and Patrick was wonderful. The next day when I come in, the director says, I just looked at the Russian. You're too gay. You understand you're gay. You're coming across gay. I said, it's not gay. I'm not gay. It wasn't gay at all. That's not gay. You want me to do gay? I can do gay. I've been working gay for 14 years. I can do gay. That's not gay. He's just simply an ordinary person. You're not used to ordinary people on the deck of the Enterprise. Well, listen. Now, I was very fortunate because Roddenberry was still alive. And I say, give me today. I said, I'm going to do all of my scenes today, and when you put those, you've got to imagine what I'm going to do today before you get to the last scene. I said, so watch what I'm going to do today, and then make your decision. And I promise you it's not gay. He's just ordinary. And indeed, that was what happened. And Roddenberry saw it and said, he's fine. He's fine. And I was introduced to Roddenberry by Brent Spiner, who, as you all know, I'm sure you've seen him. It's just, his dry sense of humor is just a killer. It's just a killer. And he was all dressed up like Data, with his makeup and everything. Roddenberry wanted to introduce Dwight Schultz. He said he's the actor who's been he's the first gay actor on the. And Roddenberry looked at him and said, yes, but at least he's good looking. And which, of course, Brent is good looking too. But anyway, so the work that I did on Star Trek, from that, I mean, it was a real shock because I didn't. There were some protocols, the uniform protocols, for instance. All those things are all zipped up from the back, and this cast has been working together, and I'm there. I'm a guest, and I come in, and when they're finished, when the director says cut, and you finish the scene, all of the actors go, and then wardrobe comes out. They unzip them, and everybody walks off without their towels. I'm standing there as the guest star. I didn't put my arms up. Touchdown. No. And then, of course, you see, and I'm going to get away, Patrick Stewart had little pads to kind of buff him out a little bit. Back then I was svelte, but not quite as svelte now. I'd have trouble getting in one of those uniforms. But all the secrets were just exposed. But it was the greatest bunch of people. Practical. Jonathan Frakes, a big practical joker. Well, my first close-up, my first day, my first close-up, they shoot far away, then they come in for a close-up. Jonathan Frakes crawled in. He crawled in behind me and went under my legs and put his hands on the inside of my thigh. Now, I would love to have seen that day. But that broke ice. It was for all the years that I was on that show. I cannot think of it. It was just camaraderie. Quite different from the A-Team. There was a lot of tension on the set of the A-Team. But it was the A-Team was my show, and I could improvise. I was invested in it as something that was part of me because I was in the creation of it. I was a guest on Star Trek, but you were on the paramount lot with a history, and you were working with people who wanted the show to be the very best possible show for you, for the fans. I was talking to some of the fans here today. You never had less than 12 rewrites on Star Trek. we had to stop production to get a rewrite on the 8th. I mean, that's the way, the difference between the two. And don't get me wrong, Stephen Cannell was a brilliant writer, but he had 6, 7 other shows that we had no writers that were consistent. All the writers from the first year went on to another show. They all became producers of new Cannell shows. So we never had writers that stayed with the show to improve it. One year, I don't think it was like the 3rd year, they brought in writers from Saturday morning cartoons. Now you remember, you think this is a kid show? And they're bringing in, I mean, yes, it's a kid show, but it's also an adult show. The demographics were amazing. But they really, and this is a terrible thing. I had a producer who has since passed away, named John Ashley, who said to me, and I will never forget this as long as I live, Dwight, we can give them shit, and we'll fall over the finish line. Their objective was 100 shows. That's it. That was their objective. That's it. NBC hated it. Cannell wanted to move on. It didn't matter what we were doing in the field. It doesn't matter what the soldiers are doing. This is what we're doing. And we so different from the experience on Star Trek. Yes, the characters were both jewels. And when people say, which one did you like better? Which one did it's like, which child do you love more? And my only answer to that is, Murdoch is the person I always wanted to be. And Barclay was close to who I am and who I was. That may seem strange, but I think that's why I was always bad at auditions. Very bad at the audition process. Like I said, 7 jobs in, well over 30 years as an actor. I just don't get jobs through the audition process. I know people who get jobs every time they audition. So there's an aura, there's something that of confidence that people are looking for that doesn't come across when you walk in. You don't really want to, I'm Sally Field. You really do like me. It doesn't work. And I sweat. I'm very nervous when I go into auditions. I sometimes go into panic mode. I haven't a clue. I even went to a doctor. It didn't work. But that's sort of the story of the 2 shows from my standpoint. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Yes. Have I done any directing, or am I interested in directing? I've only directed in the theater, and I have interest in directing, but not as a director. It's not an avocation. I have certain things that I would like to do. For the last 10 years, I've been working on a project which I would say is the rehabilitation of Edward Teller, great scientist who was involved in the Manhattan Project, because no one has ever been told the story of the making of the atomic bomb. It's all a myth. Complete myth from beginning to end. And I suppose it's kept this way because for security reasons, but you've never been told the real story, and I'll just tell you this: we made the bomb for Stalin. We actually built it for him, and it's an amazing story. But I've been working to put the story together, and I would love to direct that either as a theatrical piece or as a documentary. So that's and that's been 10 years, and I've just finally gotten the information that I needed to tie the pieces of the story together, because there's one piece that's been missing for many, many, many years, and that is the myth was that Stalin was shocked when Hitler abrogated their treaty and attacked Russia. That was it. He's shocked. He went into a depression. It was a total lie, total misrepresentation. And when Stalin signed the pact with Hitler, which a lot of American communists in the theater and in motion pictures left, He did it because he knew that Hitler was working on the bomb, and that he was going to be the first one that it was used against, because Hitler hated the Bolsheviks. And so, when he signs the pact, he already knows what's going on. He has already sent Leo Szilard to the United States to get the United States, who had the industrial base, to make the bomb. He's already sent his spies, his commies here, to get us to build what he could not, so that he could be protected from what Hitler would do if he actually got the weapon. And it's an amazing story. It's an amazing story, and it's coming together, and that's what I'm going to do next, if I can. Yeah. When they brought Barclay back to Voyager, well, I was told that no one was going to come back, so everybody was, and you're flabbergasted. And as I said, it's a gift. It's just a pure gift, a joy. You can't believe it. And when I came back, I knew the crew better than the cast of Voyager. Then I got to meet Robert Picardo, who just a phenomenal guy from New York. We had so many friends in common, and we spent hours and hours and hours talking and laughing together on the set. I just feel very fortunate, and I love the idea that I programmed him. His social bracelet, that was the best part. So Barclay was responsible for the holographic doctor. But, in life, especially in show business, you just never know what's going to happen. You just don't know what the future holds. And, 13 years, really, spanning 2 series, and finally getting promoted at the end. I was no longer a lieutenant in those last 2. But, it was just a remarkable joy over that period of time. Yeah. Sorry. Well, besides the project that I talked about, I mostly I have been doing talk radio for the last 3 years, but I've had to move out of that because they won't pay me. There was 2 years of I gave up a lot of work to do that, and at my age, I'm 65 years old, so it's not like I'm 40, where you can. I want to give 4 or 5 years to it, maybe 10. No, it doesn't work that way. So I do a lot of video games, and now it's motion capture, which is far more time-consuming, and it's like full circle. I used to do just the voiceover work, and now that they say, no, you're going to act now. You don't get paid for acting the way you did when you were in front of the camera, but the technology is so astonishing that while you're moving around with these suits, these giant screens around the arena, you can see in real time your avatar on you. So you're really looking. You become part of the avatar, actually, when you look at it. And I'm sure this is going to be in the home in another 5 years, some version of it. Really, it's really amazing, the technology, the speed with which technology is just outpacing everything. But so now you go into an empty space and you rehearse the way you rehearse a play or a scene in a movie. And your face is covered with these little multiple dots, and your facial expressions and everything are all utilized. It's like acting now. Again, it's like getting miniature plays. But I'm doing tons of those. But the Manhattan Project, the Atom Bomb Project, has been my background goal. Yeah. No, because I have just fleshed out the outline from beginning to end, and it's very specific. I've got to be very historically accurate, or it won't work. And I have some friends in the CIA who were friends with this. There was a Russian assassin named Sudoplatov, who wrote a book called Sacred Secrets. And he was the first Russian to come forward and say that Leo Szilard, Robert Oppenheimer were both very helpful to the Soviet Union. Very helpful. And he got massacred by a certain segment of our political structure. But when I talked to the CIA, I said, well, who do I believe? You know, these academics who support Oppenheimer, or do I believe Sudoplatov? And they all go, Sudoplatov. And that for me was a turning point, because you know when I was doing Fat Man and Little Boy, which is about the atomic bomb, you know, his wife was a communist, his mistress was a communist, his brother was a communist, but he wasn't a communist. That's what they said. But Elizabeth Bentley, the first American female communist agent who turned as a counter-spy, actually, she nailed him and everybody accurately, even though she too was dismissed as a nut. Everything she said turned out to be true. And now the academia has finally admitted that Oppenheimer was a communist, but he was a good communist. It never changes. I mean, I don't care what you do. You can't. Academia is so far to the left, they just won't tell the truth because they have too much invested in that. But at any rate, I have to get the outline exactly right, which I pretty much have to. But I have to get all the names correct. And of course, this is a revelation. Maybe most of you don't know. There was a gentleman by the name of Harry Hopkins, who was Roosevelt's closest advisor. He was with him in Potsdam, along with Alger Hiss. So we had Alger Hiss, a communist agent, and Harry Hopkins, a communist agent, in Potsdam. And Harry Hopkins was responsible for the Lend-Lease Act, which you all saw in your school book. I mean, I did. Lend-Lease. What was the Lend-Lease Act for? It was for sending hundreds of tons of uranium to the Soviet Union. And nobody could figure out why. But it was all being sent while we were starting the Manhattan Project. Right after the Manhattan Project started, when Roosevelt gave his okay. Suddenly, hundreds of tons of uranium were going to the Soviet Union. It's this sort of thing, and it's all there. It's just nobody wants to tell you about it. And it's an amazing story. Yeah. Well, he just asked me about he asked me about the radio show, that he had listened to it, but then I stopped doing it, and then I got a lot of flack from that because the radio show was conservative. Well, I had to stop the radio show because I did it for I did Howling Mad Radio for free, and then I filled in for some conservative talk show hosts for 2 years for free, which is about 7 years altogether. Oh. Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. But you can't work for free. You have to pay. I have to pay a mortgage. I have to pay for my daughter's education. She's a first lieutenant in the Marine Corps now, but we still have lots of for her. Thank you. But you got to get paid, and I mean, I literally got paid nothing. So it was 2 years, and a lot of auditions I didn't go to. And if you don't, in January, if you're not ready to audition, then that means there's no jobs in February, March, and April. So I had to stop. But in terms of flack, yes, you're an outcast. As a conservative actor in Hollywood, you're an outcast. And it's in 30 years in Hollywood, maybe 500 times, people would run into a room and say, "That blanking Reagan, that blanking George Bush, that blanking Sarah Palin." Never once did I ever hear a single conservative, and walk into a room and proclaim. Because in their mind, there is no other thought. It is not possible that there is another thought. Simply does not exist. And so you are pushed aside. And if you open your mouth, which is what I did when I was on the 18, I would make it known to somebody, hey, don't say that. You know, that's a hero of mine. Well, then the cocktail napkin comes out, and your name gets, it's not a blacklist, but it's don't use him. He's one of them. Oh, you're one of them. It's a frequent comment. Oh, you're one of them. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, you're one of them. And then you don't get seen as much. You know, it's typically human, because we're still tribal in so many ways. But yeah. My best and worst memory, well, my worst memory is being fired. I'm not kidding you. I mean, moving all of my stuff out of the active dressing room and spending the next week thinking that, oh my God, I've blown it. That was the worst one. The best memory was kissing my wife in Spouses, which was the last time the 18 was #1. And it was one of these magical things in your life. How many people get to kiss their wife on national television when 30 million people are looking? It was just one of those remarkable things. And a lot of fans have sent us the captures from that sequence. So we had them all over our refrigerator. Of course, we looked a lot different, but it was that was really one of the great memories. And there are so many wonderful actors who worked on the 18, and to sit down and talk to them, you know, that's a kind of secondary thing, but it was that's a great memory. Yeah. Advice for actors? Yes, I do. Listen, stand-up comedy is where it's at. I don't care how serious of an actor you are, standing up and doing your thing today is the most important thing. I mean, I had the opportunity to go to Regional Theater and rep where they were hiring me. But actors have to make it on their own today. And if you do that, you then can choose what you want to do later. And it really is about control. In repertory theater, if that's what you wanted to be back in the 60s, that was control. You could go and play 5 different roles in a year in Houston. And that's it was just a great experience doing the great plays. So there is no future in that. And so you need to make it on your own, to stand up and do your own thing, get a little control, and then do the things you want to do after that. And that seems to be and that's a tough road. It's all tough. There isn't the kind of synergistic community that we used to have. But that's my advice. No, voice acting is quite different if that's what you want to do. I mean, if you just want to do voice acting, then work on getting your audition tape together. That's the only place I can act. That's why I'm doing it. I can act. I can play wizards and do all of the dialects that I love to do in voice acting. But even that has changed. Even that has changed. But that at least has some stability to it, because you're not. Although motion capture has changed and all that, they want people who can act with their bodies and so a lot of when I first started doing video games, you didn't know the names of the people who were doing all of the work. And then one day I went in to audition and I got a part in the Trials of Riddick, and I put these headphones on and there was Vin Diesel's voice. And then I noticed that the video games were being made for movies And the stars of the video games were the actors who were in the film. So the voice talent, where you had leading roles, you were being shoved to the background doing secondary and tertiary roles. So that aspect of it is being pushed to the way. And as motion capture becomes more and more prevalent, it will become more and more difficult for voice actors to just do voice acting unless they want to move, get their bodies moving. Because you still have to do the stunts there. They want all of that. They want their facial expressions. They want the body moving. You're falling, and they want actors who can act. So that will impact the voice acting. Yeah. What was it like to work with George Papard? George was, my story, the very first thing he said to me was, "Hello, Dwight." In the makeup trailer, "Hello, Dwight, I'm not a very nice man." And he was, he had been, his wife, Elizabeth Ashley, had accused him of hitting her with a cast iron frying pan. And George said, "If I hit her with a cast iron, would her head be here? I did not do that. I drank. I was a nasty, ugly man when I drank, but I didn't do that." And George was he was a movie star. He often said, "I've gone through more money than this television production company spends in 6 months." That's what he would say. And but he was very proper on the set. Incredibly proper, but a chess player. He knew scripts. He knew what worked in terms of scripts. And so you would walk in, and he'd say, "Kyle, this is what I'm going to say to them." And he'd have all of his lines blacked out. And you, of course, are depending on him feeding you these lines for your lines. So that would be a little difficult. But on the whole, he was very proper. And he had no sense of humor about himself. He had one about you. He could laugh at your expense, but he could not laugh at himself. He could dump a bucket of water. This is it. He dumped a bucket of water on me. And I laughed and took it very wrong. So I got a spray bottle of water, right? And he was leaning up against something like this, so I sprayed his armpit. And he went, that's it. That was it. But he was very good with script. He knew what he was talking about. And he understood what worked and what didn't when it was on the page. So, one more question. I heard Upcook created it and he went over it. Oh, reinterpret. Oh, well, I met Sharlto, and Sharlto Copley, who played Murdoch in the movie, from South Africa, and, my first, he talked like this, like, it's so good to meet you, I'm a big fan of the show, when I was a kid, I loved the 80s, and to meet him, to hear that South African accent, then to see his audition for the part, which was simply brilliant beyond it. He loved it. I thought he captured the essence of the character in the show better than anybody else. And I adored him personally, and I thought he did a great job. That's my opinion.